From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. Americans wrongly believe American Muslims are 27% of the population. Muslims continue challenging FBI for spying on California mosques after Supreme Court ruling. Report finds that 2021 saw a surge of racist crimes in France. India's HINDUTVA groups want wider ban on hijab after court verdict. Canadian short film competition showcases diversity of Muslim community. And our top story tonight. Among religious communities, minorities. American Muslims were estimated to be 27% of the population, but they actually only make up about 1%. The same is true for Jewish and other racial and ethnic minorities such as Native Americans, Asians, and Black populations. Two recent YouGov polls asked respondents to guess the percentage of American adults who belong to 43 different categories, including racial and religious groups. The polls revealed people's perception of minority group sizes compared to actual population estimates were vastly overestimated. Muslims in Orange County, California, who are suing the FBI for sending an informant to spy on mosques, will keep fighting the case in lower courts after a narrow U.S. Supreme Court ruling favoring the FBI. The ruling could mean that the FBI can invoke a secrecy privilege, claiming a threat to national security by publicly litigating its use of an informant to spy on mosques. It could also make it more difficult to prove the FBI violated the First Amendment rights of Orange County Muslims, their lawyers said. Patrick Toomey, senior staff attorney with the ACLU's National Security Project, said it is a dangerous sign for religious freedom and government accountability. A growing number of Asian American women across the United States are speaking up about their experiences with racism and anti-Asian violence. The number of reported hate crimes and racist incidents has increased nationwide, according to statistics from advocacy groups. Protests are expected across the country against the rising racism and discrimination. More than 20 million Asian Americans live in the United States, with California, New York, Texas, New Jersey, Illinois, and Washington home to the largest populations. The administration of President Joe Biden on Tuesday commemorated Equal Pay Day, symbolizing how much longer women must work to make what men earn in the previous year. President Biden announced a series of actions to enhance pay equity and transparency amongst federal workers. A proposed regulation would prevent federal agencies from using a job applicant's salary history in the hiring process. This can help break the cycle of potentially discriminatory pay following women and workers of color from job to job. American women on average earn 83 cents for every dollar earned by a man. The disparities are even greater for Black, Native American, Latino, as well as some Asian women. In international news today, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators reportedly are moving towards a 15-point peace deal that could involve Kiev formally renouncing its ambition to join NATO. The deal also calls for Ukraine accepting limits on its armed forces in exchange for a ceasefire, the withdrawal of Russian troops, and security guarantees from the West. The Financial Times reported Wednesday delegations from Ukraine and Russia made significant progress towards an agreement, though major obstacles remain. The deal would involve Kiev promising not to host foreign military bases or weaponry in exchange for protection from allies. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden is heading to Brussels next week for a NATO summit. Biden announced a new package of $800 million, including cutting-edge drones, anti-armor, and anti-air defense systems. Israeli prison services use COVID-19 restrictions as a tool against Palestinian inmates, according to a report from the Palestinian Prisoners Society. By November 2020, more than 100 COVID-19 cases were reported amongst prisoners. Amani Sahraneh, spokeswoman for the Palestinian Society, said that each jail cell held more than 6 prisoners, leading to more risk of spreading the virus. Sahraneh said prison officials also publicly refused to administer the vaccine to prisoners. The report noted that dozens of Palestinians have been detained in centers where the conditions were deplorable, creating a fertile ground for the spread of the disease. It also quoted ex-prisoners who claimed Israeli prison guards were spitting on roofs and public places. Israel holds some 4,650 Palestinians, including 200 children, in its jails. Thousands of protesters in war-torn Syrian's rebel enclave of Idlib marked 11 years since the start of the Arab Spring. Protesters were buoyed by the global outcry over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. More than 5,000 people gathered in Idlib's main square for one of the largest rallies in the region in months. Many Syrians hope that the war in Ukraine, launched by the Syrian government's main backer, will rekindle interest in their cause. A nationwide uprising that erupted on March 15, 2011, escalated into a full-fledged civil war in Syria. President Bashar al-Assad's grip on power has been bolstered by Russian President Vladimir Putin's military support. Bringing more news stories after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks? Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Yama Nabi, son of Haji Dawood Nabi, one of the victims of Christchurch terror attacks targeting 2 mosques in New Zealand, longs for his father. On March 15, 2019, Australian white supremacist Brenton Tarrant killed 51 worshippers and injured 40 others at the Al Noor Mosque and Linwood Islamic Center. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole last year in the first such ruling handed down in the island nation. Haji Dawood Nabi appeared in the terrorist live stream of the attack. He unknowingly welcomed Tarrant into the mosque with the words, "Hello, brother," and was amongst the first to be killed. On Wednesday, activists and victims' family members attended a peace symposium honoring the victims, including Nabi. In 2021, French security services saw a surge in racist, xenophobic, and anti-religious offenses, the Interior Ministry's annual report revealed Friday. The analysis was released ahead of March 21st for the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The ministry said racist attacks, mainly in the form of abuse, insults, provocations, and public defamation of people from African countries or minority backgrounds, were seldom reported. According to France's Human Rights Commission, racism often manifests through forms of subtle rejection and is largely underreported. The study said over 12,000 racist crimes were registered. Of those, 6,300 offenses were found to be in the high or medium level crime category. The total number of incidents jumped 16% compared to 2020. Various short films will be featured in this weekend's Mosquers Film Festival in Edmonton, Alberta, highlighting Muslim creativity and countering negative stereotypes. Yasser Iqbal, festival outreach coordinator, said that the goal of the nonprofit is to become a key outlet for Muslim filmmakers to express their work. Started in 2007, the festival is seen as a brewing ground for inspiration. The year's event includes 13 local submissions and more than 150 films in total. An independent screening committee will select the top 10 films. Iqbal said the goal is to inspire Muslims to pursue the arts and create content that more accurately reflects our collective Muslim experience. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan welcomed the United Nations General Assembly's move approving a resolution declaring March 15th as International Day to Combat Islamophobia. The resolution was adopted Tuesday by consensus of the 193-member world body and was co-sponsored by 55 mainly Muslim countries. It emphasizes the right to freedom of religion and belief, and it recalls a 1981 resolution calling for the elimination of all forms of intolerance and of discrimination based on religion or belief. In a tweet Tuesday, Khan congratulated Muslims worldwide, saying, "Our voice against the rising tide of Islamophobia has been heard." Hindu supremacist groups are demanding restrictions on Muslim girls wearing hijab in classrooms in more Indian states. Their call comes after the Karnataka High Court on Tuesday upheld a ban on the religious headscarf in schools statewide. The court's decision backing the southern state's February ban has been welcomed by top officials from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party. They say students should avoid wearing religious clothing in school. A female Muslim student has filed an appeal to the ruling in the nation's highest court. The Indian Supreme Court could review the case later this month, her lawyer said. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid in Chicago. Just like you, I was moved by that Allahu Akbar lady. She stood her ground, fearful of none, for her hijab and for her education. Sisters and brothers, Indian Muslims are facing a genocide. India does not care for Muslim protesting, but it does care for the world opinion. Therefore, we must push the United Nations. The UN has a responsibility to protect. They must prevent genocide. Please sign this UN petition now. Get others to sign. It will help. Trust me, it will help. We need 1 million signatures, brothers and sisters. Please sign now.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the hijab ban in Indian classrooms, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Hena. Greatly appreciated. Now we move to discuss a very important and timely subject. That is what is happening to our Muslim sisters in India. Many of you may know that over the past several weeks, there have been protests after a public school in an Indian state banned Muslim girls from wearing hijab to school. Those girls then sued, they went to court, and the court in that state recently upheld the school's decision, banning those young women from wearing hair scarves, from exercising their religious rights while they attend school. We want to discuss this today with our special guest, DISHAD Ali, who is the content editor of Hot Hijab. Assalamu alaikum, Miss Ali. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, brother?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for joining us today to discuss this very distressing and important topic. So, the issue of Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry in India and other countries is a really important issue. Before we dive into it, I want you to tell us a bit about Hot Hijab, and then we're going to dive into the topic, inshallah.
Sure, absolutely. So Hot Hijab is a hijab company based here in New York City, based out of New York. And, it's a retail company online, and we sell hijabs of all different types. And we're one of the leading hijab companies, if not the leading hijab company in the United States. And we also serve Muslim women in general. So, myself and my work as the blog and content editor, my job is to build community. It's to cover all issues and topics pertaining to Muslim women and, to work on different social justice pieces as they come into our wheelhouse as a company as well. So, we're very passionate about this. We've been working on a Can't Ban Us campaign for the last 2 years, where we're, trying to advise and help and support different, communities around the world who are facing different hijab bans and other types of bans on religious wear. So the case out of India is, really important to us. We are keeping an eye on it.
Yes, absolutely. So give us your reaction to it and the company's reaction. I mean, your company makes and provides hijabs to women who want to wear that in keeping with their religious beliefs. And yet in India right now, in this state, a Muslim woman has to choose between her education and her duty to God. What's been your reaction, company's reaction, perspective on this decision?
I mean, I think women all over were very frustrated by the outcome of the high courts in India. What's frustrating is that as part of their ruling and in the pages that they wrote on their ruling is that they, according to the 3-person judges, the 3 judges who issued the ruling, they said that they did their investigation, they did their research, they looked through scholarly literature and the Quran and Hadith and this and that, and they found no evidence to support that hijab is fard or mandatory. And based on that, it's not then a protected, religious thing for Muslims and for Muslim women in India, which that probably is the most frustrating part of the situation, because, you know, we've covered hijab ban stories and religious clothing and headwear stories all over. We, you know, in this is a problem in Quebec. This is a problem in France. This is a problem many places. There's countries where you're forced to wear hijab. There's countries where you're not allowed to wear hijab. And so we've been covering the story for a long time. And this is one of the first times we've heard a ruling where it's actually ruling on, is it religiously required or not? And based on that, we're going to say that then you can't wear it.
No.
I mean, you know, that's a really dangerous precedent.
I mean, it's remarkable. These are three judges who are not Muslims, number one. They are judges in what is ostensibly, supposedly a secular state, and telling Muslims what is and not essential to our faith. It is remarkable. And in some ways, it's more insulting than what other countries do. For example, France could care less whether or not hijab is part of Islam or not. They just don't want Muslim students wearing hijab or Muslim public workers wearing hijab. And they're bold in their bigotry. Whereas these judges are not only bigoted, but they want to somehow twist our religion to satisfy their bigotry. So, this has been very frustrating, as you noted, and shocking to many people around the world. What can people do about this who are not in India, if anything? I understand that an appeal is being filed, that there's a higher court in India who may hear this case. But in the meantime, what can or should we be doing about this?
So actually, to take it back a little bit to your point, I actually believe, and I would like us, to make sure of this, to check it out. But I'm actually pretty sure one of the judges is Muslim, which is even more interesting and puts another spin on the situation. I would need to make sure of that fact, but I believe one of the three judges is Muslim. And Muslim or not Muslim, India is a majority Hindu country, but Muslim minority is a very, very large minority, and more than anything, like other places that purport to be democratic nations where you should have freedom to do, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom to wear what you want. India is also a democratic country, and for this to be happening here, it's just very frightening, and it's a dangerous precedent, like I said before. And as for what we can do, there's actually a lot of things happening already around the world. There are different protest rallies being planned. There are different campaigns being put together. There's a campaign or an idea being floated about here in the U.S. about sending all congresspersons and senators and representatives a hijab and asking them to, consider our diplomatic relations with India. I think elevating the story, it sounds old and it may sound like the first line of defense, but it's really one of the most important lines of defenses. I mean, I think this is a story that's getting lost amongst many of the stories that are out there right now. So I think elevating the stories, it makes me think about last May, when there was the riots and the bombing happening in Gaza and around Masjid al-Aqsa. And there was such an elevation of that story on social media that it really got attention in a way that had not, that the whole Palestine issue had not really gotten attention in that kind of a way in a while, right? And it really started changing the language around this. So I can't, say enough for continuing to elevate the story, for sharing the story, for reaching out to your representative. There is a Islamophobia bill, I think sponsored by Congresswoman Ilham Omar out there, that's making its way through. I believe it's been passed by the House of Reps, but not through the Senate yet. I think that will go far if that gets passed in working on our relations with countries like India and others where there is a rise in Islamophobia and hate-based crimes. So I think, supporting that, asking your senator and representative to support that, elevating the story, paying attention to different campaigns and protests that are starting obviously out of India and even here in the West. A lot of us may feel like we're protected here. Like, why should it matter to us living in the US, right? That's India or that's France or whatever. But no, we actually have several cases of, hijab bans and problems in different workplaces or in school where there's waivers, where high school students have to deal with waivers to wear hijab on the court. And, that's something we've been working behind the scenes at Hot Hijab, working with different high school rule committees on changing that language and allowing, women to play without having to have a waiver form signed and things like that. So this story and this issue of the choice to be able to wear your hijab or what it is you want to wear it's just not an India story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And, one of the things that I've heard, Dilshad, from Indian Muslims and just human rights activists in general is real concern that things like the hijab ban, it's not the end of the campaign against Muslims, that we've seen an increase in other forms of discrimination, lynching, violence, other hate crimes, that we could be looking at something really, really, truly horrific happening to Indian Muslims on a wide scale under the leadership of the BJP and Narendra Modi, who is a right-wing fascist. Is there any concern that you've heard that this thing could get worse and worse and worse, that the hijab ban is only the beginning?
Absolutely. And this is, 100%. The rising tide of Islamophobia and violence that's happening in India against Indian Muslims and other minorities is well documented. I believe they're at level 2 on the genocide watch. It's a real troubling, problematic, scary situation for those in the diaspora around the world, and especially those living in India. There's citizenship laws that are being challenged. There's property laws being challenged. There's violence occurring in many states across India. And there's also coalition building and people fighting against this. And, in parliament over there and on the ground in ground swelling protests as well. But it is definitely just a marker of many things that are happening in a very orchestrated and well thought out, well planned way. And as a world, not just as us in the West or us in the United States, but as a world community, we should be really paying a lot of careful attention to this and watching what's happening and staying involved.
Absolutely. And we've seen now what people can do. We've seen in just a few short weeks a massive political, economic, and cultural boycott of Russia over what it's doing to the people of Ukraine. And if that can be done to Russia, then we would say that we should be holding other human rights violators accountable, including Mr. Modi, before he starts engaging in even more horrific violence against Indian Muslims. So thank you, Dilshad, for coming and sharing information with us about this case, about what Hot Hijab is doing and others are doing to address it. And we look forward to having you again soon, inshallah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Edward and Dilshad. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.